All right, again, I wanted to say thank you for everyone hopping on the call, and we will dive right in. So let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda for today. First, we will go over why we are actually speaking today and include in that topic HPNAP requirements and why we are making some more changes. What agency allocations look like before the 23-24 contract period. We'll discuss we'll discuss changes that we implemented for the current grant period. This is like right now, what we will be implementing this year for the next period, which will start on July 1st, how we will proceed after this upcoming grant period. We'll touch a little bit on what this means for each of your agencies. And as always, we'll save time at the end for any comments, questions, concerns that may arise. All right, so for the purpose, before we can really get into today's purpose and discuss that, we really need to share some critical information on the topic of HPNAP food grants. HPNAP provides supplemental funding to a network of emergency food programs such as yours all across New York State. These resources are used to increase the availability of nutritious food, improve the operation of food relief efforts, and target additional services in those high need areas. New York State leaves it up to each individual food bank to develop an allocation process for the uniform and equitable distribution of these HPNAP grants. Since the needs of each agency are unique, you've seen one pantry, you've kind of seen only one pantry, HPNAP allocations are to be individualized and depend upon an objective application process and statistics. So to the maximum extent possible, agency award amounts are to be based on the need for services within a specific geographic area, agency's ability to budget and spend awards with the food bank, as well as the agency's ability to serve its clients. So there's a lot of things at play here. Now, our goals are to ensure that we are meeting the basic requirements and following the spirit of the HPNAP grant as provided by New York State. We want to ensure that these funds are equitably distributed and are supplemental and or match a program's own efforts. These funds should not be viewed as a sole means of support for any agency. So now let's go back in time and see how we used to award HPNAP food grants. All right, so for the pre-24-25 grant period, we're actually just going to take a snapshot and use the 2023 to 2024 data as our example. How the process of determining food grant awards began. We would start with the total amount of HPNAP food grant that we have available to award. The amount of that grant money to allocate hasn't changed in the last 5 years or so. It's still $488,050. Then we would determine the percentage of food insecurity, percentage of food insecure individuals actually using meal gap information that we received from Feeding America. And this data was typically about 2 years old. Once we had those percentages, we would divvy up that $488,050 by those percentages. So based on a meal gap, we would divide the grants so that Broome County, and these are using the food insecure data from 2 years prior to the 23-24 year, Broome County would get 40% of the allocation of the total grant because they had the 40% of the food insecure individuals. And this equaled about $192,000 and change. Chemung County would have gotten 16% or just under $80,000 and so on down the line. Now remember, this is just based on a meal gap. There's no other factors involved. I also want to point out that Schuyler has the smallest percentage, so they get the smallest slice of the HPNAP pie. Fun fact, 3 of our counties provide funding for emergency food programs within their counties. And we are actually going to throw those county grant information into this mix. We have a grant amount divvied up between the counties based on food insecurity amounts. At this point, we would then reduce a county's HPNAP amount by how much county grant money they received, and then redistribute those amounts to the other 5 counties. You're like, so what? Come again? Well, let's see what this actually looks like in amounts. But first, let's go ahead and refresh our brain with the food insecure and county totals, subtotals, all right? So remember, Broom's at 40%, subtotal 192, Schuyler at 3, subtotal 16.9. And let's go ahead and keep a particular eye on Broome and Chemung, but also Tompkins County. And here are the county subtotals again. So just refresh your memory. Broome was reduced by $10,000. And what that amount was, and that amount was then spread out over the other 5 counties. They all saw a slight increase. And then we would take Tompkins County grant. And their county grant allocation was $80,000. We would then subtract that from what was intended to go to Tompkins County and split it up between the other 5 counties. The last county that we did this to was Steuben. They had a county grant of $55,000. We removed it from their allocation and spread it out to the other 5 counties. Now, as you can see, after doing this, Broome County, while they had a county grant, it was only $10,000 compared to the $55,000 and the $80,000. So they still received additional funds because of the healthy Steuben and Tompkins County grants. Broome went from about 40% to 51% of their share of the total HPNAP award. Chemung went from 16% to 23%. Schuyler from 3.5-ish to 5%. Tioga, almost 7.5%, jumped up to 10%. Steuben County's allocation went from 17, based on the meal gap information, food insecure, down to 10%. And Tompkins went from 16% down to 1%. So after we did all this, Tompkins County was only slated to get 1% of the HPNAP award. And that only equaled $2,589 to be split between 15 agencies at the time. Now, if you were to split that equally, that would be just about $172 for each agency in their total HPNAP award. And we know that county allocations are not equal either. They are based on how many people your program served compared to the other agencies in that county. So if there's a very large pantry in Tompkins County, they're going to get the lion's share of that $2,589. And the smallest agency in Tompkins County would just get a small percentage of that $2,500. By doing it this way, and we did it this way for years, county total HPNAP is no longer in alignment with the food insecurity rate. Counties with the food grants are being penalized because the county supported their efforts, but they're not being penalized. The 2 counties with the largest county grants see the largest reduction in HPNAP funding, and counties without a county grant and Broome are being subsidized by these other counties. Now, what does this actually mean at an agency level? Well, let's take a look at a couple of pantries. And we're going to revisit these 3 pantries throughout this presentation. So let's start with right now in 23-24. Pantry A is a large pantry with a county grant. So their 23-24 allocation is $13,632. Pantry B is very similar in size to Pantry A, but they didn't have a county grant. So they were being supplemented by other county grant funds. So their allocation was $17,634. And then Pantry C, that's a very small pantry, and they also don't have a county grant, but there's also something a little weird with them, is they're not a high functioning small pantry. Their allocation was $310. And like I said, as examples, we will continue to monitor the progression of grant allocations for these particular three agencies as we move further along. Agency allocations are determined by how their agency stands up to other agencies within that county. I just want to give you a little refresher there. So keep those factors in mind. This is a ton of information that I just threw at you. Let's take a breath. And remember, this was for 23-24. Now that we've seen what we used to do, this is how we started moving away from that process in this particular grant period. We started to make changes last year, if you remember. And the start of the process didn't change. So this slide should look very familiar to you. We are still breaking up this grant by the county meal gaps. So no change there. And this should also look very familiar to you. For the county breakdown, meal gap data was a little late coming in this particular year, so we used the previous year's food insecurity rates, in case you were wondering why the numbers were exactly the same. So we're using those same food insecurity rates. And the initial makeup and breakup of the food grant is 40% for Broome, so $192,000. 3% for Schuyler, so $16,900, and then 16% for Tompkins, $79,000. Cue the first change. This past year, we did not back out county grants. Counties were awarded amounts that better aligned with their food insecurity rates. Since counties were no longer being subsidized by other counties' grants, the amount for each county was drastically different from anything they had experienced before. Knowing that this would happen, the food bank did commit to $140,000 one-time emergency food grants to agencies negatively affected by this change to help bridge the deficit that they were experiencing when we made this change. So let's compare what counties received last year to this year, our current grant year. So huge differences across the board. In 23-24, Broome County got just under $250,000. But because we didn't back out the county grants, their allocation was $192,000, based 100% on meal gap. Schuyler was at 23 in 23-24, and then our current year they're at just under $17,000 because we didn't reallocate and back out county grants. Now, you're wondering what the asterisks are. Those are the 4 counties that saw support from the food bank because there was they were going to see a drastic decline. So this is where we had interventions with $140,000 one-time emergency funding. So time to revisit our sample pantries. Last year, that large pantry with a county grant, Pantry A, received $13,632. And this year, that increased to $36,590 because we were no longer punishing them for having a healthy county grant. The large pantry without a county grant, Pantry B, saw a dip of about half of what they received last year. They also received emergency funds to help bridge this dip, to help lift them up so that they weren't taking such a dramatic and drastic hit. So they went from 17,000 down to 9. And last, that small pantry without a county grant, little Pantry C, they saw a huge increase despite no longer being subsidized by other counties. This is due to that particular agency experiencing tremendous growth from one year to the next. So this kind of shows that there are other things at play within a county. They served more people than the previous year, so compared to the other agencies within their county, so their slice of the pie got a little bit bigger. So let's keep going. Take a brain cleanse, because now we're going to move into the upcoming contract period. The contract period that you all just applied for with food grant applications, looking ready to rock and roll. And a reminder, this particular grant period starts on July 1st. This process actually begins slightly different. New this year, each agency begins with a baseline amount before we divvy it up based on county meal gap information. If you're a pantry, you're automatically getting $500 as a baseline. If you're a meal site or a shelter, you're automatically getting $250 put into your account as a baseline. And this will be factored in, as a reminder, before we divvy it up between the rest of the counties based on meal gap. So a total of $53,750 automatically is assigned to counties. Something else that's new this year is agencies will now also have a ceiling. We are capping the maximum amount of HPNAP food grant allocations at $40,000. So no agency can have more than that. Now we are taking into consideration people served. So we did our baselines. We're keeping an eye on that ceiling or that cap of $40,000. But now let's figure out the people served. Not only are we looking at meal gap, which is really, really important because these are people that aren't currently having their needs met, which is where we need to improve our services, but also we're taking into consideration people served, the work you're already doing, because we want to continue to support you with your current services. So not only meal gap, but your current service numbers are going into effect based on your county. Again, county grants are not part of the equation anymore. Now, incorporating both service numbers and baselines for all agencies, along with the meal gap, we have the amounts designated for each county. So our food insecurity rates really haven't changed over the last several years. But utilizing the baseline and now also service numbers, Broome County's baseline or subtotal is $188,000. Chemung County is 76, Schuyler is 18. Let's go down to Tompkins real quick at 82. But what does this actually mean? You're just throwing numbers up on the screen. We are. Let's compare. So here are the county allocations from the current year compared to the previous 2 years. So back in 23-24, when we were subsidizing non-county grant counties with funds, Broome County got $249,000 in change. Schuyler got $23,000 in change, and Tompkins got $2,500. Our current process of just not utilizing county grants, Broome was an equitable based on meal gap, $192,000. Schuyler was at 16, and Tompkins at 79. Adding in our baselines to kind of even things out a little and lift everyone up, and taking into consideration meal gap plus your current service efforts, Broome is down to 188. Chemung is going to drop by 3,000. Schuyler County is going to increase. Steuben is pretty level. Tioga also sees a little bit of a bump, and so does Tompkins County. So these are based on adding in baselines and the current efforts you're putting in. So what does this look like for a pantry? Pantry A, that large pantry with a county, saw a reduction as other pantries in their county were lifted to better equitably distribute the funds. The large pantry without a county grant, Pantry B, saw a slight increase. And that small pantry without a county grant, Pantry C, is still seeing some growth. And also, they're benefiting from those baselines. So remember, these are pantries, so their baseline is 500. So 500 plus whatever their piece of the county pie is. They now have a little bit more capacity to purchase food to better serve their community. The intention here is to lift the entire network up with the tide when distributing these funds. So what does this mean going forward? All right, let's look into the future. So, some things are certain, and some reflection and feedback will help guide the rest of how we proceed. And this could continue. Um, and this could look like us continuing to not factor in county grants into this equation. We don't see the value here, and it is more punitive than it is rewarding. We're going to continue factoring in county level service numbers. I think this is important. Instead of just focusing on where services are not reaching, we're going to focus on where services are not reaching and what you're currently doing. So continue to support you. We probably will keep the baselines. I don't know yet. We don't know yet. Amounts may vary after we evaluate the spending capacity of each type of agency. Now, the caps. The caps will reduce each year. Next year will be a cap of $35,000, and then the following year of $30,000, and finally, ultimately capping at $25,000 in the 2028-2029 grant period. And this is intentional to better equitably distribute our resources and these funds, and also know that these funds are not to be the sole source of any agency's program. These are to be supplemental. And we will also be reviewing and evaluating this process, this entire process along the way. So this isn't like one and done, throw it out. No, we're going to keep trying to improve upon this. And remember, the intention of this is to more align with the spirit of the HPNAP grants given out by New York State and equitable distribution of resources. So what does this mean for your agencies? This means different things for different agencies. Remember, you've seen one food pantry, you've seen one food pantry. While this process is an entire network change, the implications for your own agency will be unique. Some will benefit from this tremendously and this will allow them to do more and be more impactful within their community. And some will not benefit from this because maybe they won't get as much New York State money as they have in the past. We know that not everyone will be pleased with these changes. And while we are sympathetic, we really have to look at the picture of our entire network and not one single pantry or agency. By increasing capacity of pantries that have had less resources historically, they will now be better equipped to help meet the need within our community of those facing food insecurity and potentially lighten the load on many overburdened agencies. So let's go ahead. This was a ton of information. So let's do a quick recap here. No more penalizing agencies because you have a county grant. It's gone. There will not be any food bank funds like that emergency fund of $140,000 that we did. We won't be subsidized putting in emergency funds to subsidize this particular food grant. Baseline amounts for each agency. This is brand new. The new ceiling is in place of $40,000. The new process is still in flux, and in all entirety, it's probably going to be adjusted to make so that we ensure that we are still being equitable in what we're doing here. And once again, this better aligns our process with New York State HPNAP guidelines. Hootenanny, this was a ton of information. So much that I just dropped on all of you. And I think right now, you want to take a moment, let it all sink in, compose your thoughts, compose your questions. I'm happy to stop the slideshow and open the floor up for any questions, comments, concerns.
You have one question in the chat, Amanda.
All right, what's that?
Do county grants go directly to agencies/pantries?
Do county grants go directly to agencies/pantries?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that. Yes. So we have 3 counties that currently have county grants. We have instructions from the counties on who they're supposed to go to, and we divvy those up with baselines already. And then also by service numbers. And they go directly into your agency's account if you happen to be in one of those counties. They're currently agencies getting more than $40,000 maximum grant. Not this year, not this year coming. No, there aren't. Historically, there have been. You guys can unmute and ask if you don't want to put it in the chat. I guess I have a question for all of you. Is this clear? Does this make sense? Is there still confusion on what I just presented on?
How long before we're gonna know what we're getting?
Oh, Smitty, that's a wonderful question. We are doing the final touches on the allocations that will go to James at the very beginning of June. So that is next Friday. It'll be to James. And then middle of June, we are anticipating getting your award letters out to you.
Sorry I couldn't be there to help this year, but I've been sick, so
You're fine, Smitty, you're fine.
uh,
Thank you, Tim, for saying that this was very clear. I've been stressing about this. So yeah, so plan on mid-June. If we can get to it sooner, we'll get to it sooner. And then again, those funds go live on July 1. It will still be split into two allocations, July 1st and then again January 1st for the second allocation.
Amanda, I had a question. Is it possible when you send those out, can you send like what we got in the previous year as well as the one that we're getting, just so that we can sort of see, that relative difference?
I can send instructions on where you can find those award letters
Okay, okay,
because
great.
they're right at your fingertips. We sure can.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Absolutely. As Randy likes to say, she loves her long, awkward pauses. Karen, I see you unmuted. Did you have a
Yeah, I
comment?
did. I'm trying to reason this Broome County
Mm-hmm.
business out with being the highest in security of food
Mm-hmm.
and Broome County only giving what, 10,000?
That's another conversation. So that
Yeah,
was
but
so
is all of this confidential, or could you say, look at these other counties, what they're dispersing, and we're the high. I mean, like shame them, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
I will say that Broome County in the last couple of years has contributed more to our efforts, but I think this is a wonderful conversation to bring up with your PPC. And no, it's not hidden.
okay.
And Randy just put in that Broome County has increased the awards over the last few years.
Oh, okay.
And it's not there are no secrets,
But
but
it's still pretty low for,
it had
you
been
know.
$10,000 for a long time. It took a lot of advocacy work and on many of the staff here at the food bank and also our agency partners in Broome County to get this to the attention it needed to be at, to where your elected officials are seeing like you guys are doing a lot with little.
Right.
And just to build off that, we're trying to get in front of all of our counties
Mhm.
every year, but especially those that do fund us to talk about the impact of that money. And we want to start inviting agency partners. So Karen, if that's something you're interested in, we can keep you in mind when we try to get in front of the Broome legislature. Because what we did last year, and I can't remember if we shared this with you all, is we actually we created a packet that we call the benefits of partnership for on the county level. And we looked at all the value of all of the HPNAP grants, all of the TFAT food, all of the anything that we've been providing through our own impact grants. And when we total that up, and this isn't even counting like staff time or like gas in the trucks, just the value of mostly the food, we found that we were bringing over $9 million of value into Broome County. So we've been trying to crunch those numbers on each level, but to say, Steuben County, you're giving us $75,000, but we're also bringing like $6 million of food and effort
Mhm.
into your county. So that's a very good investment of your time. And that was actually the first time we'd done that, because just the value of the TFAT food alone, that's millions and millions of dollars of, resources that we were bringing into the county. But if you're interested, Karen, we can get in touch.
I just want to read out for folks that can't see it, especially folks from Broome. Hannah Birch put it in the chat. Thank you to the Food Council members and our amazing leader, Teresa. Shout out to Teresa for bringing awareness to the food insecurity in Broome County. There's been a lot of work done in Broome County, and now we're starting to replicate that type of work into Tioga County and Tompkins County. So it's happening.
Amanda,
Hi, Terry.
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
So when I look at the Schuyler County food insecure percentage rate of the 3%,
Mhm.
and then I look at the clientele in my pantry, like I get a lot of clientele from Yates County
Mhm.
just because of where I sit. So I'm feeding people that don't even like play into my Schuyler County 3% insecurity.
That's a
Like,
really good point to bring up. We have a lot of partners that sit on boundaries or borders, either with
Mhm.
PA or another county that is not within our service area. And this also lended to another reason why we decided to incorporate the work you're actually doing now and your service numbers now of who you're actually serving. That was never taken into consideration before. And I think that really shows why Schuyler County saw a little bit of a bump, because before it was just your meal gap. Now it's your meal gap plus the work you're doing in serving many times folks not from your county.
okay.
But thank you
Mm.
for bringing that up.
And I don't want to turn them, like, I don't want to say my pantry's for Schuyler County people only because I get Steuben people and I get Yates and I get Schuyler.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I don't want to close the door. I want to feed them. But then when I look at the Yates clients that I get and it doesn't play into that percentage to kind of help, yeah, I just,
Yeah.
I question it a little bit, but
And so we saw that there were gaps before. And this isn't perfect by any means. Yes, we're starting to take more into consideration. Can we still improve upon this? More than likely, yes.
Mhm.
So let's see what this does and see what else we can do to further it along as we keep evaluating and trying to make the best of our resources and supporting all of you. I will say that I have carved out time later today and in the upcoming days. So if you are like many of us, need to let this sink in, let it ruminate, let it stew in the back of your brain for a bit. And if you have questions specifically about your organization and what the impacts might be, I'm willing to get on a call with you, pull up the numbers, and walk you through like how this is actually going to impact you. Oh, Karen, we got you, girl. We got you, nothing but love. But I do want to let you all know that
It sounded kind of rude after I thought
you're
about it. I
good.
thought, that didn't sound really good. And I apologize to Teresa and Randy and you also for all the footwork behind it all.
We're here because this is a passion project for all of us. Let's
Exactly.
face it. But seriously, take your time, think about it. I'm going to get this uploaded to YouTube and I will send out the recording. Have other folks at your agencies watch it and get back to your PPC if you have feedback, or you can email me directly if we need to schedule time to have a conversation. We'll make time for you because this is important. Oh, thank you, Stefan. This will be a topic of conversation at the upcoming coalition meetings. And I think there's only one that I cannot make. So I'm happy to join those conversations. So if you also have them, bring your questions there too. Thank you, Stefan. All right. Well, with that, I thank you all for your time and your thoughts, and I'm going to give you back the rest of your afternoon. It's been a pleasure. Bye, folks.
Hi, everyone.